It's 3:30 in the morning, getting ready to get going again. Not awake yet, haven't had a coffee, but it's absolutely stunning out here. What a gorgeous dawn. Okay, 2 cups of coffee in rapid succession and I'm ready to face the day. But is the day ready for me? That's the question. Got to get to Stromness today. The wind is going to be coming from the east, at least according to the forecast, and it's going to be 12 knots according to the forecast. But we'll see what actually happens. Worst case scenario, I end up having to motor there. I've got to make the tidal window to get in because the currents between the islands can be pretty hairy, so I've got to go with the east going tide and aiming to get there around slack water or just after. It's about 12 hours in a direct line at 4 knots, so we can't afford to mess around. It's one of those days where it's just got to do it. And this is the boat that was anchored next to me in Loch Clash. They arrived here about an hour after me. Got 2 young kids on the boat, and it sounds, given that it's only 3:45 in the morning, it sounds like they're up and getting ready to go as well. So I'm assuming they're going to be beating into it to try and make the same tidal window as me. And Ian on SV Gabrielle is just coming round the Cape, so there's a good chance I'll end up sailing in company with them as well. Should be rather cool. They're heading to Stromness and it's going to be really nice to catch up with them again. Looking forward to that. And away we go. I just love Scotland. Following close behind the couple with 2 kids that were in the same anchorage. I will admit I was a bit of a nervous wreck last night. The currents around the Orkneys have a fearsome reputation and can run at extreme speeds, 12 knots. But I've checked, double checked, triple checked. I've phoned the marina and spoken to them, and as long as I go into the channel towards Stromness in the flood tide, so the east going tide, then it shouldn't be a problem. It's also very reassuring to know that the other boats in the anchorage set off at the same time as me, so probably have the same plan, and that Ian on SV Gabrielle also has the same plan, so that's reassured me quite a bit. Also concerns over the wind. I mean, I know there's no wind now, and I know the forecast says 2 to 4 variable and then easterly 2 to 4, but my experience with the forecast so far is moderate to poor. I always, as a rule, add one Beaufort onto the Met Office forecast, so I should potentially be expecting a 5. It does occasionally go 2 Beaufort over, so worst case scenario is 6, but that's from the east this afternoon, which is not ideal for motoring into, and certainly not ideal for sailing when the direction you want to go is east. And we've got a foul tide to go through as well because it's a 12-hour trip. At the end of the day, I've got to go out today because the weather is going to get worse. The winds from the east are going to get stronger, and so I have no choice really, and I'll have to deal with whatever I have to deal with, and that's the simple fact of it. Anyway, it's 12 hours, it's not the end of the world. Worse things happen to men at sea. I'm sure it'll all be fine. But I am now outside of cruising areas that I've done before. I'm outside my comfort zone and pushing myself to move forwards. It would have been very easy to go, I'll just stay in the anchorage there for 3 days and wait for the weather to blow through. Very easy. And then I would have been there for 4 days, and then maybe 5 days. And time is ticking away. It's already the middle of June. I'd like to spend at least a month in Norway, and I want to start heading back. Well, I need to do the crossing back before the end of August, really. And then I've got September to make my way back down to Cornwall. That's the plan, roughly. It was the middle of October when the storms hit last year. Sometimes they're a bit earlier than that, sometimes they can come in September, so I don't want to take the chance of being stranded somewhere like I was last year, waiting for a weather window so that I could carry on. I wasn't the only one waiting for the weather window. There were lots of boats in the marina with crews on them, not solo, sitting there waiting for a window to get south. But at the end of the day, this is where I'm meant to be. This is what I'm meant to be doing at this point in my life. And I've got to face these hurdles. I've got to face these days where I'm not 100% sure. I've got no one to ping ideas off, really. No one on the boat, that is, to ping ideas off. So it's all down to me. Sometimes that can be hard, but the rewards, well, sometimes the best journeys are the ones you planned the least. That's how the saying goes, isn't it? Looking forward to getting to Orkney. Another big milestone. And then it's Fair Isle, and then the Shetland Islands. And once I'm there, wait for a weather window to get across to Norway. In the morning, we've got wind on the nose, still motor sailing because there's not actually enough wind to be able to sail at a speed that will get me there in time, especially since the wind right now is coming from the northeast. But even so, it's a lovely day, it's a lovely gentle cruise, and if you look very, very closely, if you can see it in the glare from the sun, just about make out the Orkneys now up ahead. It's 10 AM and we're almost halfway. The wind has increased to 12 knots, but still from pretty much right on the nose, and the tide is due to turn soon. So we're gradually slowing down. Should have no more than about half a knot of tide against, but obviously we'll see when the tide's in full flood. And ETA at the moment is about 3:30 PM, which should be just about right for getting slack water. We'll see though, we will slow down a bit more, so it might be a little bit later than that. and I've just spotted the sails of SV Gabrielle off on the port side there. Still way off, miles away on the horizon, but gradually creeping closer to each other as we get nearer to the islands. And we're sailing! Not quite the right direction. That's where we're supposed to be going, over there. But for a little bit, at least, I can sail. The motor's off. When it reaches the point where I need to motor sail again and point the nose where I'm supposed to be going to make the change of tides, I'll have to do that. Well, the wind's between 16 and 18 knots now, so we're cracking along. I'm pinching a bit because we're still too far off course, but we're making good time, and it's much better than motoring. About 7 miles to go until we get to the mouth of the Hoy and start making our way into the passage between the islands. We're approaching Hoy Mouth. That's the entrance to the channel that we need to go through to get to Stromness, which has some strong tides, and unfortunately motoring again. We reached the point where the time I wanted to be there by and the amount of time it would have taken had we carried on sailing were no longer in alignment. So the sails are away and the engine's on to get us there on time. Someone said in a comment on one of my videos that I should motor because it's safer than bobbing around. Well, it's not safer. It all depends on if you have to be a particular place at a particular time. So for instance here, to make sure it's safe to go in, you need to really be here somewhere around slack water, and with the next tide being the flood tide. So I mean, it's a simple decision. I have to motor, and yesterday to get round the Cape again, I had to basically be going with the right tide. So again, I didn't have a choice. I had to motor, and that's just the way it is sometimes. Now, I would much prefer never to motor, but that's impossible. There are always going to be times where you have to motor to stay safe. But to answer the question, if there's no wind and I'm out there and I'm bobbing around, should I motor? Well, only if I've got a timescale to meet. If I don't, I can spend the whole day, I could spend 2 days bobbing around on the water. It really doesn't matter when you're not moving. You don't really need to worry about hitting things, so you carry on as if you were at home. You pop your head up every now and then, have a look around. If I'm not moving, generally I'll only sleep for around 20 minutes or so at a time. I could probably sleep for longer, but that just makes me nervous. It's not my speed that's the problem, it's the speed of the other vessel. So there you go. Question answered, I hope. Thank you for the question. the first time I've had boat neighbours quite so close. Actually able to have a conversation between boats. Now we're approaching the entrance to the Sound. Speed is increasing as we pick up the incoming tide. That'll be a seagull flying past the Old Man of Hoy. It's quite an impressive erection. Since I was on the magical islands of Orkney, I decided to go on a bike ride around the historical sites and dragged poor Ian and Andrea along for the ride. This is Unstand Chambered Cairn. It's around 5,300 years old, and it's a bit of a crawl on your hands and knees to get inside, but well worth it. These are the Stenes standing stones, predating Stonehenge by around 1,000 years, as most of the archaeological sites on the island do. The theory is that apparently the people who built Stonehenge started out up here on the Orkneys, and this is the remains of a nearby settlement. And this is the Ring of Brodgar. I'd actually say this rivals Stonehenge. It's considerably bigger with a huge number of stones. And these are the ruins of a settlement dating back to 3000 BC at Scarra Brae. I'd highly recommend, if you have the chance to get out to the Orkneys and have a look at some of these amazing places. Very much worth it. And then, of course, what trip wouldn't be complete without visiting the cathedral?